In today's video, we have the latest update on the trade rumor mill. We have the news that Vladimir Tarasenko's trade request is still very much on the table, and he still wants out of St. Louis, even though things have gotten off to a good start. We have a signing to talk about, some waivers news, some injury updates, as well as a news out of Vancouver on Travis Hamonic. And I want to talk a little bit more about the situation in Chicago and everything that came down today with that investigation and all the results that were announced. All that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a lot to cover here in today's video. A couple quick items here right off the top. First up for NHL Waivers, not a lot going on. Everybody that was on waivers yesterday, which was headlined by Corey Schneider, the Islanders, did indeed clear, so no waiver claims, and we don't have anybody new on waivers here today. The New York Islanders also announced a signing today. They've announced that they've signed Ross Johnston to a 4-year extension at $1.1 million per season. So clearly Johnston, who doesn't play a ton, he's really there for his physicality, kind of like an enforcer, if you will. Not a bad contract, really. If we see what the team recently done in the last few years with guys like Matt Martin and Casey Cizikas and all these longer-term, cheaper contracts, I'm not surprised to see Lou Lamoriello do something similar here for Johnston. So that's not too bad. Some might argue that there's too much money, too much term based on his role, but at the same time, it keeps the cost-controlled situation and keeps somebody in the lineup who can play, for the next 4 years. I mean, they may not have a guy like Cal Clutterbuck, for example, for that long either. So it's a situation where he might be able to get more of a fourth-line role consistently in the not-too-distant future. So we'll see where that signing leads to. Some quick injury updates. The Coyotes are going to be without a couple of key players. Connor Timmins is out, and he's going to be out for a long time, looking at about 3 to 4 months. He had to be helped off the ice. This poor kid has had nothing but injury problems to start his NHL career. He's battled concussions. I kind of feel bad for him. He's a very talented young right-shot defenseman that's had nothing but bad luck to get going and to create a consistent, healthy NHL career. But hopefully when he comes back, he can get on the good side of health here and stay there for an extended time. They also lost goaltender Carter Hutton, who's hurt and is going to be out for upwards of a month. It could be closer to 2 or 3 weeks, but looking like possibly a 4-week timeline. Now, we also got news today out of Vancouver on Travis Hamonic, who's one of the few players that have signed a contract, didn't report to camp. A lot going on. There was a lot of speculation. It was related to his vaccination status, which we really can't 100% confirm. All we know, based on what a Canucks said, is that he was at home dealing with a personal situation. They had placed him on leave instead of him being suspended. Essentially, from a cap perspective, it does the same thing. So he wasn't getting paid. He was on leave. But now they've announced that he's going to be joining the team, but he's joining their American Hockey League affiliate in Abbotsford. So be curious to see where this goes. I'm not sure how long they intend to have him play there. I'm not sure if it's a difference in protocols between NHL and AHL that makes that more appealing right now. But clearly, even if they have full intent on bringing him to the NHL roster, he's missed significant time. He didn't really attend anything, right, for training camp and the early part of the season here. So he would definitely need time to to train and condition and all that. So going to Abbotsford is definitely the right move if he's going to play anywheres in the short term. So we'll see where this goes, but this could eventually lead to Travis Hamonic being back on the NHL roster and rejoining the Vancouver Canucks. So we'll see what kind of timelines we're looking at for that. Now, I do want to talk further about the bombshell news that came from Chicago today. Of course, we know, you probably saw the video earlier. If not, check it out on the channel. We had some huge breaking news today that the investigation results on the Blackhawks sexual abuse allegations were being released. The law firm was releasing all of those details. I know many of us were skeptical on why or how that was going to work because, essentially the Blackhawks, it kind of felt like the Blackhawks were investigating themselves. And I didn't have a lot of faith in the process, but we've seen a lot of transparency here. It looks like the ownership, like the Wirtz family, were pretty easy to work with. They allowed a full, thorough investigation, and I must say, with all the people that were interviewed and everything, I think they did a good job. And I can say it looks like I'm happy with how everything was handled. Now, we saw Stan Bowman basically leave as GM of the Blackhawks today. After that video was out, it's also been announced and confirmed that he's resigned from being the general manager for Team USA for their 2022 Olympic hockey program. So the Team USA will be needing a new general manager for that. Not a huge surprise after everything that went down that he was going to do that. I am a little bit surprised in a way that the Blackhawks let him resign, and he essentially put out a statement throwing his boss, who would have been John McDonough at the time, basically under the bus, saying he thought his boss was doing the right thing, and he didn't. So he didn't really take a whole lot of ownership. He admitted he made mistakes, but at the same time, I don't really care for the statement too much. I think he should have taken more ownership of the situation. To me, to be an innocent bystander, you're just as guilty. A couple things, though, that came out of this. I do really wonder what we're going to see happen, if anything, to Joel Quenneville and Kevin Cheveldayoff. Both of these guys came from the Hawks organization. They were both part of this meeting that essentially took place where they were discussing what to do with the abuse allegations, and essentially the team covered it up, decided to wait. They were in the midst of going on a Stanley Cup push. This was right before the Stanley Cup final when it came to their attention. And if you read through the full thorough report here, which I will link again in the comments, also linked in the other video posted today, there's a lot of graphic stuff in there, and there's a lot of disturbing material and things that happen behind the scenes. And the other part that's really disappointing to read is that even the players of that 2010 Stanley Cup team are not innocent in this situation. Obviously, there's multiple victims here in this situation. Obviously, one of them was putting forth the lawsuit, and we have, confirmation through this report that some other players on the team were even taunting them about it once they found out, referring to Brad Aldridge, who was the coach who did the abusing or was alleged to abuse these guys, that, calling them like their boyfriend, and just a lot of rude, crude remarks that were disgusting. So, player names were not revealed in this report. I'm not sure how detailed things really were in that sense, like from the investigation side of things, but it's just really disappointing to hear all this going on behind the scenes. But the other part, that after having more time to digest everything, look at the report more thoroughly, and just kind of read through and look back at history here, I'm really disappointed with the NHL's $2 million fine. To me, that is a major slap on the wrist. If you take a look at some other scandals that we've had, now of course this is the only one about covering up abuse, but the Coyotes, for example, just not too long ago, in the last couple of years, were accused and found guilty of doing testing on junior age draft eligible players outside of the NHL Combine, which is against the rules, basically trying to get a leg up on the other teams when it comes to having information to be able to draft certain players. They lost several very key, very high important draft picks that were really set back in their future development because of that punishment. Now, I'm not saying they didn't deserve the punishment. I felt they did, and it was justified because they clearly broke the rules. But to me, that punishment is way more severe than this one. Now, another thing, if you look back, the New Jersey Devils were fined $3 million for cap circumvention back in 2010. Now, they were later refunded, I believe, half of that. So essentially, they ended up paying $1.5 million. I believe that was all the issues around the original Kovalchuk contract that was signed there. Obviously, covering up abuse, way more serious. Way more serious. People's lives were impacted for the negative, and they were only fined $500,000 more 11 years later. That's disgusting. Gary Bettman, the NHL, Bill Daly, whoever is involved in making this decision, really, really, really dropped the ball. Yes, people are leaving the organization, but do you really see anybody really getting fired? It seems like they kind of all let them resign. So there's not a whole lot of punishment here per se, right? Like, this is not the way to do this. If you really want to change hockey culture and you really want to protect your players and you really want to take care of this the right way, the punishment would be much more severe. Just to put into context their fine at $2 million, the Chicago Blackhawks make approximately, on average, $2 million in profits every single home game. Think about that for a second. That means that they basically lose revenue on one hockey game as punishment for covering up sexual abuse. Does that seem right to you? Sure doesn't to me. And the big thing that came out here today too, that I did touch on briefly in the other video, was Kevin Cheveldayoff, Joel Quenneville being involved. They were both a part of the meeting. They both publicly denied knowing anything, which was lies. I don't completely understand. I mean, I understand they have to be careful what they say publicly, especially in the midst of an investigation and all that. But these guys, I don't see how their teams that they're employed by can carry on with them. These are pretty serious allegations that they were aware of this, and even though they may not have been the head person in charge, didn't do anything about it. Now, if you notice, Marc Bergevin, the GM of the Habs, also worked for the Blackhawks around this time. He was not mentioned at all. So that tells us that, according to the investigation, he wasn't involved in any meetings, and therefore they're assuming he had no knowledge of the situation. So he appears to be the only one that we talked about before that was kind of cleared of everything here. But Chevy and Coach Q clearly had a lot of knowledge on the situation. So I really strongly wonder what's going to happen. Now, Cheveldayoff's already put out a statement through the Winnipeg Jets indicating that he's basically saying that he's already given all the information that he knows to the investigation. He will continue to cooperate in every sense, and he's looking forward to having his meeting with Gary Bettman, and he will not make any more statements until after. So Gary Bettman had put out a statement saying that he intends to have meetings with both Quenneville and Cheveldayoff individually to discuss this situation, and the league will let everybody know at a later time if there's any additional discipline or anything else to come from this. So I just don't see how their existing teams can keep them on. I understand they play big important roles and they're tough to replace, but that doesn't matter at this point. They've negatively impacted people's lives and they'll be scarred forever. So I really hope that these teams all do the right thing here, and that hopefully we can move forward and that the victims can actually, rest a little easier knowing that they get a little bit of justice here. Because this is absolutely disgusting, and I am not happy with how this was handled. I am happy in a sense that the investigation was as thorough as it was. I just don't like the NHL response. I like the fact that Chicago's decided that all of the 2010 management team, like anybody who worked there in senior management at that time, is gone. They're going to have a clean slate, new beginning, try to repair the organization's reputation. That part I'm good with. I think that's the right move. I like what Chicago's doing here. I think the Wirtz family is going about this the right way. Not so fond of the league's part. So let me know what you think, and we'll talk about this further down in the comments. But I don't think this is going to be the last time we talk about this as we await further details on potential circumstances here for Chevy or Coach Q. Now, the last thing I want to touch on here today is Vladimir Tarasenko. Now, we know that he had requested a trade in the offseason. It never happened, obviously. There was lots of conversations. We do know that at least one team looked at his medicals and were scared off. That information has been confirmed. And I heard reports talking today again on the Jeff Merrick show between Merrick and Blues reporter Jeremy Rutherford talking about this situation, and they both confirmed that they've had sources indicate to them that the Tarasenko trade request is very much still on the table. He has not told St. Louis that he's content to stay. So at this point, it's no guarantee he gets moved, of course, because given his contract and everything, it's going to be tricky to do. The Blues also might be reluctant to honor his request, given the fact that he's played well lately. He had a really good game the other night, and if he's really helping the team, and be an important piece, they're going to have trouble wanting to move him because they're going to have a hard time likely getting fair value in return. They've got 3 lines that are going at a pretty good rate right now. He's playing a lot with Robert Thomas, and obviously they don't want that line to suffer. So if they did trade him, they'd want another solid winger who could play in that line and keep the production going. Obviously, Tarasenko has been smiling, been good with teammates. He's been saying all the right things. He's played relatively well so far. So obviously, I think they're both able to mutually be mature and professional about this and go about their business and wait for something to happen. But the fact is that he still does want out. And if he really wants out, the best way to make that happen is to do all the things he's doing, to be a good teammate, to be a good player, and to play his way out of the situation. But the fact of the matter is he makes a decent amount of money. He does have that shoulder injury history, which teams are obviously leery of. And obviously if the Blues are winning and doing well, they may be reluctant to part with him. But if they do not end up trading him in the short term, and a lot of this is going to be determined by how everything goes. The fact of the matter is we did confirm he still wants out. You look around the league, there's definitely some teams that were rumored to have more interest here. I know the Islanders were one of the teams that were reportedly pretty deep in conversations with the Blues. I'm not sure if they were the team that were scared off by the medicals. They very well could have been. But as the season goes along, if they do trade Tarasenko, according to Merrick and Rutherford, it makes sense that the area they would target for return would likely be somebody who could play a top 4 left shot defenseman. Now, if you look at their forward group, they're pretty deep. They have Jordan Binnington in goal, so obviously they have and he's still relatively young on a longer term deal. Ville Husso, who's actually done relatively well so far, can keep up his end of the bargain. They're good there. It only makes sense that they try to add on the blue line. So, you would probably look to get possibly a winger back or a left shot defenseman back in a Tarasenko trade if that does indeed take place. But it wouldn't be shocking if they hold off here and do this deal next offseason. Unless the Blues have a major change here and fall out of playoff contention, then maybe we'll see something happen near the deadline. But I think at this point, both teams are able to kind of ride this out. But he does still lack trust with the organization and wants out as soon as possible, whenever that may be. So let me know where you think is a good landing spot for Tarasenko. Do you see it happening anytime during the season? Or do you think at this point it's kind of too far gone and we might have to wait until next offseason for the Blues to honor his request and find a new home for the Russian winger? Let me know your thoughts down below and we'll discuss further. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.